Hello. Continuing this week on the series on anxiety, I'm going to be talking about the nervous system and how we can support this in children who are experiencing frequent anxiety. So the first part that I would always consider is the child generally being overstimulated. So really, like if we're thinking about outings, socializing, going from place to place to place to place, the general pace in the home, screen time, and just upregulated play. So we're just wanting to consider really bringing that all down where we can, and then noticing what are the shifts that they're making in line with that. And usually we will see quite a quick response. So the other thing that we can think about is we're really wanting to notice as early as possible what their warning signs are of their tipping into anxiety. So once we start to get familiar with those early signs, and that's where we step in, and we don't let it escalate. So one of the things that we can do as well, that's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of this, is we can provide time for the nervous system to recover. So we know from endless amounts of information on meditation that the brain and nervous system deeply recovers during meditation. So this can be, if the child is really young, then of course that's not appropriate. But, getting these habits in early is a really good idea. So if you might guide them, it could just be a few minutes. It can be a visualization of just like, imagine you're floating on a cloud, or you're a leaf in a stream, and what you might see as you went down the stream if you were the leaf floating on the stream. So just getting them, and your rhythmic voice will help them to just start to soothe and come back down. And we're wanting them really coming into our bodily sensations. Is really soothing to the nervous system. It bringing us into the present. The nervous system can play tricks with the brain, and so we're wanting to play tricks with the nervous system and get it back online, or calming. And so I'll speak a little bit more on that later. There are some really great apps for meditations as well. So this can be a bedtime activity. You can just incorporate it into the bedtime routine. Smiling Mind, Headspace, Insight Timer. Even on YouTube, there's great kids meditations. And even just having in the background in the home gentle classical music, or there's a great app I've just got on my phone actually, called Brainwave, and they're using the binaural programs for sound that access the different levels of the brain. So we know that just playing this music gets the brain into those lower, I think it's the delta, where it goes into recovery. I'm not a great details person, but all the information's online, and this app is just fantastic, and it can trigger sleep, it can trigger relaxation, it can trigger alertness if we're wanting to study and things like that. So it's a really handy app to have. Another thing is, so noticing that the pressure or pace in the home that can be just dialed down a notch. So this could be around siblings as well. You might have one child who is a very different temperament to another child. So one is very introverted, one's very extroverted, one's extremely sensitive, one's really robust and bouncing off the walls, and nothing really gets to him. So we want to be aware of the way that siblings are influencing and interacting with each other. So, you know, and being sensitive to the difference in them. And so that might mean, you know, and this can be in the school environment as well, noticing things like competition that can be extremely stressful to a child that is prone to anxiety. Things like sports days, whenever they're doing something for the first time. You know, really highly sensitive children can have difficulties transitioning with new clothes, you know, anything new in the environment. So this is just their disposition, and, you know, it's also really likely that they're just going to get there at just a slightly different pace to others. So if they're not having to push up against getting through to us on where they're at, and that they need to go at a slower, more gentle pace, then that conserves a lot of energy and calms a lot of anxiety already. Just that we're listening, we're paying attention, we believe them, and we're attuning to that, and we're taking it seriously. That can be very calming in itself. So another thing we want to think about is rituals. This can be super calming and helpful for a child, because so much of life is happening to them. They are very aware of how little they are and how big we are, and how little choice they have to influence things around them. And so where a child's really acting against that and being really vocal or resistant, they're letting us know that they're feeling that things are out of control for them. So giving them more control, or just being really sensitive to how little they have. So minimizing times where they're feeling really out of their depth, and it can really help to be talking them through what's coming up, so that these children often really struggle with surprises, unexpected things. So talking through the sequence of what's going to happen tomorrow morning. And, you know, we want to be aware that we're not, you know, this can be a double-edged sword as well, because saying, you know, we don't want to be planting seeds of fear about what they're going to be having to deal with next. It's more, you want to think of yourself as a bit of a Pied Piper in taking them on a journey, in terms of, say, where you know that they struggle in supermarkets. They might not do well with the lights there. That can be really difficult for someone with a highly sensitive system. That will be triggering their nervous system. And so you wanting to provide sort of a holding experience for them, that they know that like we're enhancing safety in something that we know is a little bit difficult for them. So we might give them something to look forward to, or we know that they enjoy that's going to happen after. So it's sort of like an inward readying themselves for what's going to be happening. Or, you know, we're going back to school tomorrow after the holidays, and so we might talk about the new morning routine that we're going to be doing, and you know, some special things that we've arranged for their lunch tomorrow that we know they enjoy, and thinking about that friend that they really enjoy, who they're going to be seeing, and I wonder what the teacher's been doing over the holidays, and, you know, just little things that help them sort of like put their ease into the water again. So another thing can be, I was talking about rituals. So, kids generally, and I talked about this in the emotions video, the first video last week, we know that transitions are always hard for children, and so, but with children who are quite sensitive and who tend to experience anxiety and worrying, we can really support them with this by giving them as much in their day that they know what's coming, they know what's expected, they know how we do things, and so it can be really soothing for them to know that when they get home, they play for a little while, while, and dinner's being prepared, and dinner happens at a similar time each night. And if, they might be really particular about certain foods if they're really sensitive. So we're wanting to, make sure there's some things that they're going to eat and that they're going to find easy. They know that they have 3 stories, that they clean their teeth first, that there's a cup, that they have a cup of water, that, that there can be it can be nice to have sort of a parting ritual at the end of the night to help them let go of the comfort of having you there. And it depends on the age too. It might be appropriate that you're staying with them as they go to sleep, particularly if they get really worried or scared. And things that we can do that are easy, that soothe them, that help them calm inwardly, like having a little nightlight in the room. And anything that is just a comforting thing that you feel is healthy. Just keeping these like staples around them of things that they can rely on. And I did talk about the ways that we can help them with the self-soothing as well. So we know that when the nervous system is firing, and in someone who has a heightened stress response, that can fire quite quickly and frequently, we're wanting to give them tools that help them to help the nervous system to calm back down. So coming back into the body, and I'll repeat this just because it's such a great tool, is just remembering the 5 senses. So 5 things that I can see, 4 things that I can hear, and you can mix it up whichever way you remember it at the time. 3 things that I can smell or taste. There's 5 senses. What are they? Listening, seeing, tasting, touching. I don't know. I might be forgetting one. Anyway, I'm sure you can work them out. But there's an exercise online with a hand if you search the 5 senses grounding. And so the other thing is that we're really can really help them for us to be mirroring and reflecting to them that emotions aren't really scary. So just they're going to be picking up on our energy. And so if our energy is really scared and panicked that they're not okay, and we're sort of scrambling to sending messages that we've got to fix this for them, this is the end of the world, that because they're stressing out is so stressful, and it can be letting them know that they're in that we can actually handle whatever's happening for them, and we're not afraid of them, and this state or this feeling can help them calm. So it's sort of akin to if you imagine that you were in a plane and the pilot came out of the cockpit and was like, does anyone know how to fly? Like, we need, they're relying on us to know how to handle it, So that would be a really panicking situation if we're trusting that the pilot's got this covered and they come out questioning if we can actually take over for them while, we're already vulnerable, we're up in the air. So, so yeah, just letting them know that this is a feeling, and that we got this together. So the other thing is, in our reactions, we want to, and this is a big ask, and you don't have to always get it right. And being a parent's really, really challenging, and particularly if a child is frequently having big dysregulated feelings that can be just exhausting and fry your nervous system. So self-care always. You're so important, and you're their resource, and you have to be receiving to have something to give as well. So having a what was I going to say? You're wanting to being as consistent in your behaviour as you can, so that where there is like sudden, and you're going to have bad days, of course, but just generally, if they can rely on the predictability of how you generally react in certain situations, or if things go wrong, that repair and reconnection is initiated by you, and it's made safe and reliable again, and this is assuming it doesn't get too scary for them, but we all lose our temper a little now and then, or get impatient, but generally if caregivers can be predictable around them, then they're not readying themselves. So if there is outbursts and fighting or tension and things around these kinds of kids, or if 1 minute there's safety and wanting to look after them and reconnect, and the next minute when they get too much, they're pushed away, sent to their room, blamed, for everything being hard, or there's big reactions to their big reactions, then what will tend to happen is they'll be thinking that and interpreting their environment that they need to be vigilant, and they need to be on the lookout and on guard. And so this tends to have a reaction with the nervous system, that it becomes more alert all the time. And so then this has an effect on cortisol levels, which is, the way that the body, the brain handles stress, how easily we bounce back. So how big an impact things will have on us will be really interconnected with how much our brain chemistry is supporting us or not. So providing lots of time for the brain to be, and nervous system to be coming back in and calming back down, and creating this inner resource there in our brain chemistry. So other ways that we can support that are with silence. So allowing the kids to, potter off into the garden, or having time in the house that is quiet. We know that this really helps with the brain, with learning, integrating. A lot is going on in the subconscious for just making sense of and organising things that have happened. So really, really soothing for the nervous system to have silence every day. And also a similar thing happens when we have time in nature. So we know that there's so much science now on the benefits of grounding. So if you haven't heard about that, earthing, which is, we've got positive ions, the earth has negative ions, and, up until only the last few hundred years, human beings spent a lot more time walking on the earth without shoes, having much more contact with the earth and nature and the ground. And so what happens is that the negative and positive ions can balance out in the body. And so, everything is electrical in the body and the earth. And so this is able to be balanced out as we have time, like even just walking around the garden with no shoes on, walking on the beach, those kinds of things. And so what this does is it's another thing that another effect of that is it regulates cortisol, which is that stress hormone. So it has the capacity to shift us into our parasympathetic nervous system. So when that happens, that's, it's so essential for our health, and, for us to be able to calm at the end of the day, to then have a good night's sleep, so that, our body is going into rest and digest. So if that all gets out of kilter, we're not falling asleep properly, our body's struggling with digestion while we're trying to sleep, and that wakes us up. So it can cause all sorts of issues. And, we know that when we're sleeping, that this is so important as well, that we're getting the full at least 8 hours, often for little kids, up to 11 or 12, because so much integration is happening in the brain, healing in the brain, learning things that have been falling into place from the day. So we also want to remember the benefits of just simple mindfulness skills, which is just noticing our thinking, observing ourselves, and not buying into everything we think. The brain can play tricks. We can scare ourselves. So we want to just be aware of, when someone, it might be there's a social upset at school, and we can help our child process by going, noticing things like, when there's a fight, you often blame yourself. I've noticed that, and remember what happened last time, or and just checking how are you interpreting that, and helping just notice what's the balance there. So I hope these tips have been helpful. A lot of this information I go into in great depth, dealing with all sorts of behaviours, all age groups, in my Circle of Security program, which is coming up. And so I'll put a link to that below, and feel free to get in touch with me for any questions. Also, next week, the next instalment of this series will be looking at the physical factors, nutritional factors of what contributes to anxiety, how we can support the body. And I'm going to be joined by the wonderful naturopath Bianca Bowden, who works with me at Inspiring Choices in Robina on the Gold Coast. So that will be packed full of incredible information, I'm sure. And I look forward to speaking with you then. Feel free to put any questions below of anything you'd like more information about as well. Thanks. Bye.